Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Reputation Management webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a quick rundown on what we're going to be talking about today. First of all, an introduction. My name is Brad Fagan. I'm a senior content strategist and market analyst from Uberall. And today, Uberall is joining with Trustpilot, and our second speaker today will be Peter Simpson. He is the global head of partnerships for Trustpilot. And what Peter and myself will be breaking down will be the value of reviews today and how you can focus on reputation management and also how that will bring a massive ROI potential to your business. You'll also learn about how Uberall and Trustpilot partner to create effective reputation management. And just a quick note as well. Many of you will probably be working from home like myself today and like Peter due to the coronavirus. And I'd just like to say that even though it is impacting people and businesses around the world, today is a nice opportunity for us to slow down, reflect, and talk about reputation management and evaluate our current digital strategy. Just a little note as well about questions. You are on mute, but please send any questions in the question tab throughout the webinar, and we will get to them at the end. Also, a quick note is that your opinions obviously matter to us, and if you would like to take a moment to complete a short survey at the end and give us a little bit of feedback about the webinar, that would be greatly appreciated by us. Cool, so let's dive into it. As I have already stated, my name is Brad Fagan, but I thought I'd give you this nice photoshopped image for you to look at. Obviously, I am the market insights strategist and content strategist here at Uberall. I wrote our reputation management reports, and I like to dive deep into data and find out what makes consumers tick. And we have Peter Simpson, Global Head of Partnerships at Trustpilot. Pete joined Trustpilot 3 years ago as part of an expansion of Trustpilot's partnership program. He brings a wealth of experience of building strategic alliances and channel programs from across a number of UK startups. So let's just dive into a little bit about Uberall to start off with. So at a glance, we're a 100% SaaS B2B company. With a million plus managed locations worldwide. We have 1,500 plus enterprise clients, and we partner with 125 plus platforms and directories. We were founded in 2013, and we have 250 plus happy employees in the company as well. And to talk to you about Trustpilot, I'd like to introduce you to Peter Simpson. Take it away, Pete.
Thanks, Brad. Good morning, everybody. So Trustpilot, at a glance, we have an independent review website. We believe it's one of the most global and has over 350,000 businesses on there with millions of reviews. I think we've just crossed the 70 million review mark. As you see, we're getting a review every 2 seconds. So that number is going up greatly. Actually, it's 81 million. I can read there from the slide. We've been going 13 years, so we're truly a teenager now, and have over 800 employees across offices in Denmark, the UK, the US, Australia, Germany, and Lithuania. All of those reviews create great content and Google juice. So, you know, we benefit from actually being one of the most visited websites globally. We're in the top 1%. So actually that puts us as the 403rd most visited website in the world. And actually on a country basis, that means we're the 23rd most visited website in the UK, 12th in Denmark, 106 in France, and 138 in Germany. So you can see obviously a lot of eyeballs on those reviews, and reviews are very popular, as we will talk about more in the rest of the webinar.
Yeah, that's a great point as well, Peter, that we will first be diving into the review segment, but then later on we will start telling you a bit more about the Trustpilot and Uberall partnership, and also a little bit about the Uberall NIMI brand experience and how you can utilize that to create, to manage your reputation online. But first, let's talk about what you will discover online. The age of near me, what is it, and how does that impact reviews? The critical role of reviews in building internet trust, how to build trust at first sight, why brands ultimately should care about that, why you should approach reputation management, a little like dating, and also how you can create a NIMI brand experience with Uberall and Trustpilot. First, let's talk about the rise of near me. What is near me? Near me searches is a term basically used to talk about consumers and how they search today. When someone types in a search like coffee near me or clothing shop in my area, something like this, that is a near me search. It's proximity. It's something that consumers want to visit now in the area near me. A little stat for you, 60% of all Google searches are mobile currently today, and that matters because mobile devices have become our indispensable personal companions. It's super important we take them wherever we go, and that has definitely changed the way that consumers search and behave, as you may well know. And because of this, it's an always connected world. Consumer behavior has changed dramatically, and businesses and brands all over the world need to change dramatically as well. So welcome to the age of near me. The three trends that are currently driving near me is, first of all, the rise of searches with local intent. That's consumers searching online locally for stores, and the increase in fragmentation. This means basically that when a consumer conducts a search today, they don't just search for the same queries. They understand that when they type something into Google, Google understands their intent. And so these become very conversational and different. So brands also have to have information correct online to relate to these searches. And lastly, what we're here to talk about today, the dominance of social validation. Why reviews really matter is because they make consumers engage with the brand and actually ultimately lead to a purchase. And welcoming Peter back in now to talk a little bit about what the rise of NIMI means for consumers. Peter, take it away.
Thanks, Brad. So navigating the internet trust landscape, such a big topic and something that's obviously very close to Trustpilot's heart. And in these interesting times, when we hear about fake news and there's so much content on the internet, I think people's attitude to what they trust and don't trust, is ever changing. As a result of that, we actually commissioned Trustpilot, a company called Canvas 8, well-known research company out of New York, and asked them to poll consumers in the UK, in the US, and in France. In fact, we researched over 2,000 consumers in each of those different countries. Sorry, just trying to move the slides there. Yeah, so to introduce the research study, we wanted to share that with you as part of this webinar because I think the results are very interesting. There are 5 sections to the report. It covers people's attitudes to trust online, also how those play into reviews, the implications for different types of review platforms, etc. So I'm just going to cover a couple of the sections of the report in the webinar today and a short summary. We will be providing the report to everyone that's registered to the webinar. So really encourage everyone to download that afterwards and have a good read of it. It's a very interesting report. So turning into the erosion of trust, that's the sort of first thing that we delved into within the report, trying to understand, what's actually in people's heads, how are they understanding, what they're reading online, and also their, attitudes, if you like, to everything that they see. As well as interviewing consumers, we also interviewed at length some expert from different walks of life and experts in these sorts of fields, one of which was Professor Johan Berger from the University of Pennsylvania. And one of the quotes he gave during the interviews was people are more and more aware now that mainstream news has an agenda and isn't biased. We asked people to rank, their trust in different institutions and sources of information, and not surprisingly, political parties came 7th out of 7th. So moving forwards, so what's the implications for us then? Who are people actually turning to? So what we found was that because of their people's eroding trust of traditional institutions, whether it's the media, religious groups, governments, etc., who are they turning to? And increasingly they're turning to their peers. As Karen Cook said, trust is definitely eroding society, and it's becoming more polarized. This is a trend that we can see certainly being led in the US. And what we found is that within different types of sources, actually consumer review websites themselves are actually the second most trusted after friends and family, in terms of who people would actually trust when they're looking for important recommendations and information. That said, I think it's important to point out that everyone, I think, on the internet is being scrutinized by consumers. People are looking to the big social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, etc., with a very critical eye. I think they also apply that to open platforms and review platforms like Trustpilot. And I think we take that very seriously. And one of the things that we've done recently at Trustpilot is increased the transparency that we have. So when consumers go to the business profiles on Trustpilot, you can now see additional information that shows you, how many reviews were reported by that company. So how many are they saying might be fake, etc. Because we don't want businesses to be reporting all of those different reviews. Also, we've now provided information there in terms of who those businesses are inviting for reviews. Consumers can actually see how many review invitations are being sent and who they're sending them to. And again, all of this we think will help people then trust in the reviews that they're seeing. Overall, the study showed that people through technical innovation are optimistic for the future, and I think that they expect platforms on social media and review platforms to be providing more and more scrutiny so that they can become trusted. So what does this mean for brands? Well, I think the challenge for brands is that essentially you could get roped in with everyone else, if you like, in the and what we saw from the research that only 71% of people trust consumer brands. So obviously 29% are not trusting in the messages that they're receiving. So I think there's a challenge there for brands, and something that people should bear in mind when they're putting together their digital strategies, etc. So how does that play into different age groups, etc.? So what we saw was that there's an overall decline of 11% across the age groups, but those there were differences within the age groups, as you can see in the graph, holding up best between 25 and 34. But eroding certainly more in older age groups, but also interestingly in younger people as well. So people from 18 to 24, 21% consumers, within that group said they trust brands less than they did a year ago. So I think that's obviously a critical socio-demographic group to target, and again something that you shouldn't just assume it's older people. It's actually younger people as well can be more critical and maybe not as trusting as maybe we might perceive they are. So what does this mean for review platforms? Well, as we've said, in a general decline in trust, people are increasingly putting faith in peer-generated content, and obviously reviews are one big part of that. So, you've probably seen stats like this before, but obviously from a review company perspective, we're always, polling to understand, how people are reading reviews, etc. And so we're pleased to see that is really holding up. In fact, it's increasing. An overwhelming majority, 89% of consumers are now checking reviews before they're making purchases. And it's interesting, so 45% indicating that they're looking at more now than they have in the past. So certainly, looking at those reviews is more important than ever. Jonah Berger said, as more people are shopping on the internet and for more things, they need more. The need for reviews grows. And also what's interesting is we're seeing a lot of new brands coming in into disrupting new markets and industries, and they're definitely the ones that are using reviews to help build their brand. And we've seen this at Trustpilot with many of our customers, in the estate agent world or in, say, some of the new banks, etc. They're coming in, they're building brands. They're not as well known to consumers, so they're absolutely embracing. And probably some of the first customers that we come across in a new industry like that are the disruptors, and they're using review brands to help build trust around themselves whilst they build up their brand. And that's certainly a trend that we've seen. So when we're looking at purchasing drivers, what's the impact of reviews in general? And it does differ a little bit across different countries. Certainly in the US and the UK, it's seen as the second most important factor when people are making those consumer decisions, behind a reliable product or service, obviously being number one. Obviously, sounds like within France, there's still a little bit more trust in what people hear around them. Obviously, environment issues more important. Be interesting to see, obviously how that changes over time. So when we're looking at consumer review sites themselves, they came out as being that second most trusted source behind friends and family, third when it comes to globally. Karen Cook said people are getting more cautious about information. Certainly in the US, regulatory bodies and others aren't viewed as trustworthy. As people question their motives, depending on who's in charge of them now, it makes sense consumer review sites are more trusted than, say, expert reviews, because a lot of them and people look for a consensus. So I think one of the things we've seen is that people think that in many bodies, whether expert reviews or government, people tend to have an agenda, whereas actually when they're looking at consumer review websites, they are seeing those as being quite independent, and therefore it's that independence that's gaining the level of trust. And as we've mentioned already there, so you can see, those review sites are now the second most important thing that people are looking at behind friends and family. A little bit further behind in France, but we'll be interested to see how that changes over time. So consumers see obviously looking for independence and honesty, and just to reinforce the point again that they're seeing that from independent websites more than other sources. However, what we also saw is that there are many sources of reviews. There are reviews on social media sites, there's reviews on e-commerce websites, etc. In many places, but actually there was differing levels of trust. And so even though people are using social media more, they're not necessarily trusting what they're seeing. So I think our message is that from the research is that not all reviews are the same, not all review websites are the same. And so, trust plays differently depending on that level of independence. And I think, therefore, as a brand, you should probably be considering, I could collect my own reviews, but are those reviews going to be as trusted as maybe those that are coming from an independent site? And that these stats just reinforce that usage is going up, but overall trust in everything that people hear on consumer social media isn't necessarily being trusted. So As to reinforce the point, really, I think from a Trustpilot perspective, not all reviews are the same, and we, very much encourage brands to look at their social media and review strategy and just think, how is that coming across to consumers? Are they seeing that as truly independent or not? So just to summarize there, these are some of the key stats from across the report. 11% decrease in trust overall. People are still very much using reviews, 89%. We haven't gone through it so much so far in this webinar, but in the report you'll see there's a lot of information then about how companies engage with reviews and how those review platforms behave. Certainly, what we saw, 62% consumers would really think long and hard if they understood that a brand or a review system was allowing reviews to be censored. That would go down very badly with consumers that think that somehow they're being manipulated. And we see that how businesses and brands interact with reviews is very important. And we see that 64% consumers are really interested in saying it's not just having a great score, but it's how that business responds to reviews and is seen to respond is really important. And 55% consumers, globally would prefer reviews that are coming from an open platform. So that's just sort of summary of that report. Encourage you to read it. Quickly, just around location reviews. Location reviews is something that Trustpilot launched last year. Why is it important? I think Brad's going to talk a lot about this through his section, but Trustpilot's synonymous with online retail, although we actually service many different types of companies, estate agents, lawyers, banks, etc. But obviously a lot of commerce is done in store, but of course increasingly people are still looking online to assess who they should go to, etc. So having reviews and scores for locations as well as businesses on the internet is something that's very important to us, and that's why we launched location-based reviews last year. What this basically allows is for businesses to create location profiles on Trustpilot. Those profiles then create a score for that business across all of those different locations, whether they're car dealers or bank branches or retail stores. Those location-specific pages can then have embedded rich snippets, which is very important in terms of being seen. We know then we can create local trust boxes, which can be added to websites, which we know increase conversion. And also then you can start to use that data to actually compare and contrast the overall score and reviews for specific stores and locations, and so you can see how the different locations are doing, and that's something that you can view within Trustpilot and also with our partnership with Uberall within your Uberall dashboard. So just a couple of customer quotes there from people that are already benefiting from using Trustpilot location reviews, something that we're really hoping will grow very quickly as we're starting to see more of our existing customers engage and start to collect reviews on a local basis. So at that point, I'll hand back to Brad.
Thanks so much for that, Peter. Okay, great. So first of all, I'm just going to talk about how to build trust at first sight. Obviously, the central thesis here is that reviews are very important. So as we go through, we're just going to talk a little bit about the Uberall study and why that is so important. So let's get cracking. First of all, let's conduct a little eye test about reviews, and specifically our study was on GMB, so we're just going to look a little bit at Google My Business profiles. On the right here, you see that star rating, volume, pictures, and information are all listed here. And these are some of the factors that are really important to building trust. If we take a look again on the left, we see that there are a few different businesses, and obviously if some of that's in German, that's because I'm stationed in Berlin. So these are a few of the locations around my area. The first one, immediately when you look at it, the culture of reviews and how we define good and bad has evolved over time. But as we see now, you can look on your first look at something, you can see maybe a 3.3 star rating is not so good, and underneath that you can see a 4.6 is perhaps exceptional. And this is an example of one that is likely to show up in Google's local pack. But what are the other things that are important? Well, like I've said, the volume of reviews. Some of these businesses have, they all have high volume, but some of them have almost 400 versus 100. But how much does volume matter between business to business? If you have 5 reviews versus 100, it definitely matters. If you have 400 to 300, probably not so much. Pictures are also really important. As you can see at the top, it's a little dark. The one below that, it's a bit lighter. The decor is nicer. And if you look underneath that again, there is beverages, there is foods. They actually show what you can actually purchase there. So there are some different ways businesses show what they do, and there are different indicators to customers as to how you want to purchase. Lastly, information. If you look at the one at the bottom, they say Nguyen Kitchen says they do sushi, noodle dishes, other Asian fare. So you understand kind of what they're giving out. If you look back at the top there, you understand it's a takeout restaurant, but not much more than that. So the more information you have, the more insight consumers have to click on you and choose you at first sight. And also, you can lead a horse to water, but it's social validation that makes it drink, and the horse in this situation is the consumer. So what do we know? Well, we know that 95% of consumers read reviews before making a purchase. There's been a lot of studies on this, and they all pretty much come out to the same conclusion. Reviews are super important. Also, 88% of consumers trust reviews as much as a personal recommendation. So to just give you an insight into how interesting these stats are, a YouGov survey on how many people believed that the world was round or flat. 84% of respondents believed that the world was round, meaning that there were 16% of people that thought that the world was flat. What does local search mean for business? So we understand that reviews are important, but when a consumer conducts a search, how does that all work into it? So what we do know is from Google is that 76% of NEMI searches lead to a store visit within 24 hours. And also 28% of those initial searches also lead to a purchase in that same period. So consumers are searching for things near them, and when they are doing that, they're motivated to buy, or they're motivated to visit a store very quickly after they do that. Lastly, also, it's important to note that 89% of all retail sales, this is a US stat, but it's still an interesting stat, that 89% of retail sales are still offline, meaning that offline sales, local journeys, consumers looking online, they're motivated to purchase, and they are purchasing offline. But what has changed? Well, what I'm thinking and what I'm talking about is that the revolution will not be televised. So what does that mean? Well, big brands in the old days, they used to have these, spend millions of dollars on TV advertising, billboards, radio, newspapers. And there was a lot of brand wars, McDonald's versus Burger King, and Pepsi versus Coke. But when consumers today look online, 90% of them are not certain of the brand that they are looking for. And what that means to me, and what that suggests to me, and how consumer behavior has changed, is that reviews have leveled the playing field. And what does that mean? Well, I'd like to think of it as a street fight, a local street fight, meaning that proximity, when consumers are conducting searches in their area, they are looking for stuff in their area, and they're choosing small businesses because they can verify them as well as the bigger brands. So social validation happened. Consumers can instantly verify. Then also consumers can get information everywhere, anytime with their smartphones. And also lastly, that's because local search was a game changer, and it completely changed the way that consumers search. So it also should completely change the way that we market to customers. And one of the reasons we looked at producing our own global benchmark report on reputation management and reviews was because we wanted to answer some questions. And those questions were, what exactly is the power of a review? How reviews turn consumers into customers? how do businesses reply, how do business replies impact reviews, and what factors increased online engagement. And with the study, we analyzed 64,000 locations in 4 different countries, small, enterprise, and global businesses. We measured star rating, reply rates, and review volume, and we defined consumer engagement as a consumer that engaged with the GMB profile and asked for directions, made a phone call, or clicked on the website directly. What do we find? We found that review star rating really matters. Even an increase of just 0.1 stars can increase engagement by 25%. If we look at the data a little bit more deeper, we find that this 25% increase happens from a 4.3 to a 4.4, and also that engagement peaks for businesses at around the 4.9 mark. Interestingly enough, though, it drops at the 5-star rating, because we feel that we think that it's a trust factor. Consumers don't trust businesses that have pure 5-star ratings. But when we also look at it across SMB, enterprise, and global, we find that the 5-star rated global brands actually have a bump, probably because consumers trust that they're not going to be have so many false reviews. But also we see that SMBs have, small businesses have higher engagement until the 4.4 mark, and then the larger brands tend to take over and have a rise in their engagement. So a little bit about Google's rankings and the algorithms. So a high star rating actually helps you rank for quality searches. So an example of this is when a consumer puts in like top, highest, best of, so best coffee shop in my area, highest rated florist near me, these type of things. When people put in these searches, unless you have a minimum of a 4.0 rating, you are not considered to rank in the Google 3-pack for these qualitative searches. And also what we find is that if you want to be in the 3-pack, you sort of have to have a rating around the 4.4 to 4.6 mark. Secondly, reply rate is your golden ticket to engagement. What I mean by that is businesses that reply have a lot more engagement than businesses that don't. The ones that are replying to around 10%, so basically 1 in 10 reviews, are achieving 80% less engagement than those that are replying to every 3 out of every 10 reviews. So it's a massive increase of engagement, but also it suggests that brands really need to take action here and start engaging their customers and replying to their customers online, not just on GMB, but on all the review platforms where your customers will be engaging with you. Who replies the most? It's SMBs on average, and global brands are the worst. Also, which ratings get the most replies? Well, if you see there, 1 and 5-star ratings tend to get the most. That's because humans kind of like extremes. We like to kind of answer back to those that gave us really negative reviews, and we like to pat ourselves on the back for the 5-star ratings that we got. But there is an opportunity in that 2 to 3-star rating mark, where if you're applying to lukewarm reviews, there's probably you may get a consumer to change their review to be more positive if you're applying to somebody who had a lukewarm experience, if you promise to improve, if you offer to solve the problem. So we also think that replying to 2 and 3 stars is definitely something that brands should work on. Let's just quickly look at the findings across the markets. What we found was that the US actually gets from consumers highest engagement, and that the UK has around about half as much engagement as consumers in the US. Also, Germany is coming down there at a lowly 1.5%, doing the worst. Why is this though? We see that it actually correlates quite well with which country engages, which businesses engage which customers the most in which country. So 23%, that's the average engagement rate of US businesses versus 13% in the UK. Again, almost double the average reply rate in the US to the UK. And the US versus UK by business size. We also found that this was really interesting too. Global brands in the US actually are reply on average the most, and that's the only market where that happens. But in the UK, it's completely different. Only 0.2% of our global brand locations reply. They almost never reply. And this is obviously not great, but it's a massive opportunity for global brands to understand what they can do to reach more customers, and also a massive opportunity for everyone else to actually get in there, because of the fact that global brands aren't replying to reviews, but also a large portion of the market aren't really doing a good job either. So why you should care, not specifically just about reviews, but about the findings in our report. Well, a top-down approach will no longer suffice for larger brands. So thinking global and neglecting local is not a great recipe for success. Global brands that reply tend to get higher engagements than SMBs and enterprise, so you kind of need to think about integrating that into your strategy. SMBs can beat the big boys up until the 4.5 mark, so again, really need to think about that. And lastly, like I've just said, only a small portion of businesses reply to their reviews. So massive opportunity for every business size across the board there if you get a reputation management strategy in place. How can you improve star rating and engagement? Well, firstly, it's good to represent your brand's location information accurately online. Making sure that what you promise online, the information that you have, actually matches the in-store experience that the consumer has, so that when they come back online and give you a review, that it's more likely to be positive. Also, having an authentic brand personality online, the tone, how you speak to consumers, other customers read those reviews as well, or consumers. So, making sure you have that authentic brand personality and that you are visible online. And also, lastly, engaging customers everywhere they are talking about you and to you is also very, very important, not just, for instance, on GMB. Google uses reviews to match businesses with search intent. So I just did a quick search as well for a cocktail's best service in San Francisco, and I found, interestingly enough, that they bring up related searches. Once I choose a business, they bring up related reviews to what I've actually searched. So if I've searched best service, the reviews that come up are excellent service for one, super helpful manager and great staff, tasty cocktails and quick service. So Google actually uses reviews to match search intent. So that's super interesting too. So how do we approach reputation management like dating, and why should we do that? Well, let's take a look at, I looked at a blog recently that showed some tips for dating, and they actually match up really well with how we talk about reputation management and how we should think about it. So some of the main things here: mutual respect, trust, honesty, good communication, and a sense of playfulness. All of these things are key in finding the right partner, but also the right customer too. Now let's look at a few of these dating tips and match it up with businesses. So firstly, you're supposed to present your authentic self. And like I've already talked a little bit about, if you're going to fill out a dating profile, it's not like, I like long walks on the beach or I enjoy a coffee. If you want the right partner, you need to be super engaged in saying exactly who you are and what you want out of that partner. And the same thing is true for businesses. Your online information needs to be correct. You need to say what you offer the world and what you offer your consumers, so that you get and attract the right customers. Also, having accurate information is a major factor in ranking for more unbranded search. We have a petrol company that we work with that they don't just obviously do petrol, but they also have a coffee brand. They also have a supermarket brand. So by optimizing their locations online and having that information also accurately represented on maps, we can help them to rank for searches that involve coffee near me, supermarket near me, petrol station near me as well. So, and they also start ranking for products that they serve as well, sandwich or something like this. So it's deeper than just at the brand level. It's about products and services that you offer as well. Also, customers are willing to change reviews when a business responds. When you talk to them, it's amazing. 33% of them who leave a negative review will post a positive one if you reply, and 34% will delete the negative review altogether. That's from a study in 2011, but it is still very relevant today. Tip 2, deal with trust issues. If you are listening, learning and trying to solve problems from your customers. They might give you a second chance if you've done something wrong. This has been proven time and again. It's not based on nothing. This is literally best practice about how to engage with customers online, and also make sure you're aware of the scorned customer. They can either your best friend or your worst enemy can go away and tell everyone not to go to your location, or go and tell all their friends and family that you are amazing and that bring you home to the folks. Tip 3, nurture the relationship. Invest your time in the relationship with your customers. Understand the value in doing so. A good relationship, like I said, gets you brought home to the family. They show all the friends, and that's better than just having customers send something to you, send a review, and for you not to reply. If you are replying, they read it, everyone else reads it, and the value of that, the value of creating that customer evangelist, is it just them, or is it 50 others that they might bring in? This is the way that you have to think about every reply that you give to a customer online on all the review platforms. Tip 4, handle rejection gracefully. So they don't like you. That happens. You try and solve the problem and they're not interested. Again, it happens. Don't take it personally. See if there is any way to improve for next time so that they don't have that bad customer experience in store in the first place. How to get more good reviews? Well, you can start by giving customers cards in store, telling them to go back online and give you a good review. I mean, they've got their phones with them, so they might do it right there. Get customers to sign up to mailing lists. Email customers who you know will give you a good review as well. Be present wherever they are talking about you, and ask them directly for reviews on all the major review platforms like Trustpilot. And also, how do you do that? Well, third-party platforms like Uberall do help you to manage your information and your reviews, making that process a lot easier at the location level. Final thoughts: engaging across the spectrum of digital platforms. So this is what a fragmented ecosystem online looks like. Many different platforms out there, and these are all the platforms where consumers go to find answers. That's why it's important to manage your listings online and to also engage with them on the many review platforms there, that they're also engaging with you, wanting answers, but also giving their verdict on your brand location. And also, just to talk a little bit about the Near Me experience and the Near Me brand experience. Uberall is the Near Me brand experience platform. We offer businesses a better experience at every touch point. But how is this different from location marketing? So we feel that location marketing focuses on business locations and optimizing them. It doesn't so much take into consideration every touch point of the consumer journey, which is what we focus on primarily. That's ensuring that not only do consumers find you and like you and also eventually buy you, but that they recommend you afterwards and that they come back later. So we're looking at the entire consumer journey, that they are going to give you positive reviews. They're going to then encourage others to come to your brand, and building a solid brand experience across every single consumer touch point. That's what our brand does. And at this point, I'd like to just bring Peter back in again to discuss the Uberall and Trustpilot partnership. And Peter, if you'd like to talk us through a little bit about how we work together to create this Near Me brand experience and help our customers with reviews and reputation.
Thanks, Brad. Fantastic presentation, by the way, and yeah, some really interesting information in there and stats, etc. Really good research. So yeah, so Trustpilot and Uberall. So I think there's a number of reasons for our partnership. I think the primary one is, as I think was born in the research from both reports, is the importance for businesses and brands to reply, to respond, to engage with feedback, yeah, across many channels, but certainly obviously from a Trustpilot point of view around reviews. Now we absolutely understand Trustpilot that we're not on our own. Using Trustpilot for reviews can't be your whole social media and reputation management strategy. So therefore, we embrace and engage with companies like Uberall, who support businesses that, of course, are putting their arm around all of the feedback they're getting and providing one system where they can see the reviews and feedback they're getting across multiple channels, and then reply to that, which is obviously very efficient if they can do it from one system across multiple channels. So therefore, at Trustpilot, we have a number of integrations with the market leading players in terms of customer service platforms and location management systems. And so we're very pleased to work with Uberall, so that our joint customers can see their Trustpilot reviews within their Uberall dashboard, alongside Google and Facebook and other types of reviews. They can then understand that on a location basis as well as a whole business basis, and then allow different people within that organization to reply. And I understand exactly that's all the functionality that Uberall provides. Well, I think we announced our partnership not too long ago, and we've already got a number of customers that we're supporting together, so we're very excited for the future. I think the next slide just shows a little bit more detail, but essentially, once you're within your Uberall dashboard, the Trustpilot reviews will be organized by the particular location, and then whoever's responsible for that location can then read those reviews, understand a local score for them, but also, most importantly, then be able to respond. Obviously, the more localized that response is, I guess the more personal it is, and therefore the more effective it is. But also, I guess those roles and responsibilities, you can have a centralized team as well, that helps you with tone of voice, etc. But really, all those different functionalities, I think, are available within Uberall, and that's why it's an important partnership for us, because we understand that that's really important for especially our bigger customers. Hopefully that was useful, and I think we might be moving forward to some questions.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Peter. We obviously, again, just to remind you, we do have a survey after this, so stick around and please fill that out for us. But can we, so first we're going to look at a few questions, and Peter, I think there's the first one for you. What can I do about negative reviews? What can a business or a client do about the negative reviews they get on their locations?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'd say is, don't be scared of negative reviews, I guess, is probably the first thing to say. What we've found in other research that's available on Trustpilot, when we've actually looked at the impact of adding reviews and review scores into advertising, is a 4 stars is as effective as 5 stars. So if you're getting 4 stars, obviously some of those reviews are negative. And I think that's okay. I think consumers trust sites where they see some negative feedback because they think it's more balanced. So the first thing is don't panic. It's okay. Having some negative feedback is a positive thing. But our advice is the following. First of all, collect as many reviews as you can. And if you get as many reviews as you can, you should get more even, hopefully positive spread of negative and positive. And as long as you're a good business supporting your customers, you should get more positive reviews than negative reviews. But make sure you're inviting as many as possible. I think you talked about asking consumers for feedback. Target the ones that you think get positive reviews from. Certainly, Trustpilot's advice is to absolutely ask everybody that's come into your store, ask everyone that's bought a service, ask as many people as possible, because that gives you genuine feedback across all of those different channels. Some of them will be negative. So what we suggest you do is make sure you respond to those. make sure you can also, within Trustpilot, do a direct response outside of the public channel to that person. And as you said in your research, you can often, by engaging that person, turn around that negative review.
Yeah, super interesting there. I have a question about the factors of reputation management and which ones bring you to the top of the local rankings. This is a really interesting topic. I touched on it before. There are a few factors, but when you think about how Google establishes intent and they try and in terms of GMB reviews primarily, how they establish intent and what customers want, they look at a location. First of all, like Peter talked about, getting reviews, getting as many reviews as you can is really important factor, especially because if you're getting reviews at the location level, Google sees that, they understand that you're constantly bringing new customers, they're constantly talking about you online, and that is one indicator to them. Obviously, the review star rating that they give you is really important, but this engagement one is also very important too. I mean, we found that there is a quantifiable amount of engagement that's really important. So, for instance, if your customers are at the location level replying, leaving reviews, and you are replying very quickly, that is also quite a powerful ranking factor to get you up into the local rankings, especially on the search engine results pages, and that 1 to 3 spot. And if you're applying within a few minutes, even, I've seen small businesses take out larger brands in their area very easily and go to the top just because they're replying to their customers in every review basically within a very short period of time. But also, lastly as well, there is a very noticeable difference between the ones that rank and the ones that don't in terms of their star rating. Like I said, 4.4 to 4.6 is very, this will kind of usually get you on the top of the local rankings. And like I said, volume of reviews is really important, engagement is really important. And also, like I said, having your information filled out correctly online is super important as well.
I think there's a question for me. Yes, is the Trustpilot Partnership and Uberall available across all different Trustpilot plans and packages? Yes, so it is available to all our paying customers, and it's probably, you could in theory have it without location reviews, but really it's most useful for customers that are also collecting location based reviews, which is a particular option within Trustpilot.
Cool. I just have one here as well. What do brands risk if they don't keep an eye on all platforms? Well, you risk isolating people, first of all. I mean, this idea of consumer intent is super important today. It's understanding your consumers, it's understanding and wanting to reply to reviews, and also it's a great indicator of who your customers actually are. So, I mean, if you're creating buyer personas, I mean, reviews are super good for that, to understand who your customer is, what their motivation is, and why they're actually interacting with you and having negative experiences, and why they're actually having positive experiences. The other thing is that when you are not engaging online, when you're not listed on the right platforms, Google also sees this too, and they use this as a trust indicator, that when you're not active, when you don't have your information accurate across every platform, when the information is different across all the different platforms, this is considered as not optimized. And so I would say to treat customers, obviously the way customers and consumers, the way you'd want to be treated online, and to give them the type of information that they would want online. And this includes correct opening hours, for instance, as well.
Cool. Yeah. I've got a question here. It's quite a long one, but I think it's a good one. What is the best way to market your Trustpilot reviews in marketing communications? Any particular techniques, etc., that show your reviews off that is more effective? What I would say is, so starting with your website, one of the features actually with Trustpilot is there's an A/B testing module in there where you can do some testing in terms of the ideal places to put the trust boxes, which is where the reviews are displayed. So certainly, top of the page is effective, near the buy button's effective when you're probably just reminding people of your trust score, etc. So, but I think obviously many websites are very different. So what we'd encourage you to basically is to speak to obviously our customer services. They're absolute experts at this, and use the A/B testing and basically continually test how that works. In terms of marketing communications, we know having review scores and product reviews can be very effective in basket abandonment emails, for example. So someone's gone all to that stage, just dropped off for some reason. When you're emailing back out again saying, hey, would you like to complete, reminding them that you're very trustworthy, etc., is very effective. We've got a number of other partners who do things like pop-ups on screen, and other ways where you're just reminding and nudging people along that funnel, and certainly then using trust scores, 4 stars, 5 stars, or particular reviews to nudge people along that funnel. So I would basically recommend to experiment, use it in many different forms of communications. Obviously, we notice it on London Underground. If you go to London, of course, a lot of people doing print advertising and TV advertising, to reinforce that your brand is something that's trusted. So I would recommend really just looking at it across the board.
Great. Just the last one from me. The question: how can Uberall help me bring customers to my shops in this time of uncertainty? For this question, I think it's interesting to focus on one area, and that's actually opening hours. At the moment with the coronavirus, we're finding that a lot of locations worldwide are attempting to update their opening hours and their business information online super fast across all of their locations to deal with the ever constant changing environment. And it's super important for business brands to update their location information across all of their locations, especially when something unforeseen happens like Corona, and we're finding a lot of our customers are coming to us making sure that they can do this quickly, they can update their information, and obviously that they can communicate to their customers effectively across all of their brand locations. And this is one way that Uberall really helps, is that we obviously help to communicate changes to customers at these locations and ensure accurate information in times of uncertainty. Okay, there are a few more questions here, but because we are running out of time, we'll have to close that off. But any of the questions that we failed to get to, we'll personally answer them at the end here, after we've finished. Again, there is a form that pops up at the end of the webinar. It would be super great and helpful if you could fill it out for us to let us know what you thought, and obviously what can be improved on. And we will also share the recording and the slides with you shortly. So that's all from us. I would just like to say, please enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much for being with us, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.